Imagine a software company literally buying an entire hydroelectric dam just to make sure their app doesn't crash.
Right. It sounds totally absurd.
It sounds completely absurd.
Yeah.
But as we are about to see, that is like exactly the kind of physical reality we're dealing with in the tech industry today. Welcome to another deep dive. We are looking at a massive stack of updates from the August 11th, 2026 edition of the Daily Tech Reader AI newsletter. And the mission here for you today is to basically cut through all the daily noise and give you a crystal clear picture of where AI is at this exact millisecond.
Yeah, because we are way beyond cool new chatbot features now.
Oh, absolutely. The central theme tying all this together is that AI has officially matured. It's gone from a novelty into this inescapable, heavy-duty global infrastructure. So, okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the staggering scale of adoption we're seeing because this great billion-user race, it just ended in a tie.
It did, yeah. So Google's Gemini just crossed 1 billion monthly active users, which is wild. It's the fastest growing product in the company's entire history. And it's actually the 14th Google product to hit that billion user mark.
That's a huge milestone.
It is. But then, almost on the exact same day, OpenAI announced that ChatGPT hit 1 billion weekly active users.
Wait, weekly?
Weekly, yeah. So we are looking at a scale of interaction that eclipses almost any traditional software deployment in history, really.
1 billion weekly for ChatGPT and 1 billion monthly for Gemini. Those numbers are so massive they almost lose their meaning. But the newsletter gives us some pretty fascinating details on what those Gemini users are actually doing to, generate that traffic.
Right, the habits.
Yeah, the habits. 63% of them are engaging via voice.
Which is a huge shift.
It's massive. And the platform is generating over 150 million images every single day. Plus, Google is set to drop the Pixel 11 hardware details tomorrow, August 12th. But existing Pixel owners already got this huge upgrade.
Yeah, the June Pixel drop.
Exactly, the June Pixel drop via Android 17. So they rolled out AI-assisted video creation, floating windows natively on the device, and screen reactions.
And that screen reactions feature is a perfect example of how the fundamental interaction model is changing.
How so?
Well, the operating system is no longer just sitting there waiting for you to type a query. It is actively analyzing the context of whatever is rendering on your screen and offering these contextual actions based on that.
Right. But I have to push back a little on what this scale actually means, though. Reaching 1 billion users is an incredible milestone, obviously. But this feels like the moment cell phones went from being those clunky car phones to the pocket phones we couldn't live without.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
But how are these platforms actually keeping power users engaged every single day? Does 1 billion active users mean people are actually getting solid productive results out of these models? Or are they just logging in to, test out the voice feature and generate 150 million funny pictures of cats? Because it's pretty easy to inflate user numbers with novelty features.
Sure, I get that. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the frontier of AI development is no longer just about raw model capability.
Right.
We've largely moved past the phase of simply proving the model is smart. The race right now is entirely about scale, reach, and daily habitual use.
Habitual use.
Exactly. When 63% of a billion user base chooses to speak to an AI rather than type, that is a deeply ingrained habit. They are training themselves to expect an intelligent response to ambient spoken queries, whether they are, generating a cat picture or dictating a really complex email.
Right, it's the behavior that matters.
Yes. The tech companies desperately need that raw ambient behavioral data to refine the models for higher level tasks.
Okay, well, let's talk about those higher level tasks, because the newsletter shows a massive pivot toward monetizing those power users at work. OpenAI is pushing incredibly hard into the daily workflow. They just launched the ChatGPT desktop app on Linux.
Which is a big deal for developers.
Huge. That means they now cover every major desktop operating system. But more importantly, this single native app unifies ChatGPT, ChatGPT Work, and Codex all in one place.
Yeah, and covering Linux is a highly strategic move. They want to capture the heavy-duty developer market natively, rather than forcing them to rely on, web interfaces or clunky third-party API wrappers.
They are definitely targeting the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
We also see OpenAI rolling out premium seats for ChatGPT Business.
Right, for the heavy workloads.
Yeah, this is specifically for users handling heavy sales, marketing, and development. It gives them 5 times the usage of a standard seat and just completely eliminates the 5-hour usage cap. But here's the major structural shift. ChatGPT Enterprise and EDU just retired individually authorized sync connections for apps.
Yeah, this is a massive change.
Right. As of August 14th, administrator-managed syncs take over completely,
Hmm.
and Anthropic is doing something very similar.
They are, with the compliance API.
Exactly. Their Claude Compliance API just expanded to cover CoWork and Claude Code, meaning enterprise security teams can just pull session content and metadata. Plus, Anthropic launched Claude for Teachers, which is mapped to K-12 academic standards across all 50 states for lesson planning and data-driven instruction.
And we really have to look at the new tools coming online to utilize these environments, because SpaceX AI just launched GrokBot into public beta.
All right, tied to Grok 4.6.
Exactly, which is coming up. And they describe it as an autonomous workflow tool that acts like a team of AI agents across the day.
A team of agents. That's wild.
It is. And on top of that, xAI's new Image 2.0 just launched as the default quality mode. So you're getting things like designer-level typography, smart resize, multi-reference generation, and this really consistent style across entirely different image generations.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We have xAI generating consistent designer-level images and GrokBot acting as a literal team of digital coworkers. On one hand, having a team of AI agents acting on my behalf sounds incredible.
Right, who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. I can hand off my scheduling and initial code drafting. But on the other hand, OpenAI is forcing everyone onto admin-managed syncs, and Anthropic is building APIs for compliance teams to basically pull our session metadata. Is a team of AI agents actually helpful for the user, or is this just a new way for enterprise admin to micromanage our workflows?
It's less about micromanagement and more about survival for the IT departments.
So,
Well, the shift from simple chatbots to autonomous enterprise ecosystems forces a total rethink of network security. Think about it. When AI was just a chatbot on a website, the individual employee was the firewall.
right, you had to manually copy and paste stuff.
Exactly. You decided what data to copy from your company's database and paste into the chat. But an autonomous agent team like GrokBot operates totally differently. It is actively diving into your company's databases, moving files, scheduling across calendars, and generating code on its own.
So it's fundamentally embedded.
Yes. IT departments simply cannot allow individual employees to authorize those kinds of deep, systemic API connections on a personal level.
Oh, I see. A single employee giving a rogue agent access to the entire company's Salesforce data would be a disaster.
Exactly the issue. So retiring individual syncs in favor of admin management isn't really about micromanaging the employee's creative process. It's about workflow standardization and just basic data security. For an AI to do the heavy lifting at work, the enterprise needs to know exactly what systems the AI is touching at all times.
That makes a lot of sense. But if everyone across the globe is suddenly running these teams of AI agents all day, generating millions of designer-level images, running autonomous workflows, the sheer amount of computing power required has to be breaking the physical limits of our hardware.
Oh, it absolutely is. The physical infrastructure is buckling under the weight of agentic AI.
It really is. The newsletter highlights multiple ChatGPT outages that hit just this past Tuesday. The Go conversations went down at 2:20 p.m., there were elevated error rates globally at 3:01 p.m., and the ad manager went out at 5:28 p.m.
It was a rough day for the servers.
Very rough. They recovered all of it, but it really shows the intense strain. And Anthropic's response to this is pretty telling. They just formed the Theses Infrastructure Joint Venture with Macquarie Asset Management and Singapore's GIC.
Right, to build data centers.
Yeah, purpose-built U.S. data centers. And Anthropic is pledging to cover all the grid upgrade costs.
Which is fascinating. A frontier AI company partnering with a global asset manager and a sovereign wealth fund to physically build data centers represents a massive structural shift in the industry.
Because they used to just rent server space.
Right, exactly. For the last 2 decades, tech companies were cloud tenants. They rented server space from Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. Now, the compute demands are so incomprehensibly massive that they have to become infrastructure co-owners.
Going back to what I said at the very beginning, Anthropic paying to upgrade the actual power grid is like a software company buying a hydroelectric dam just to make sure their app doesn't crash.
It really is.
It completely blurs the line between a digital service provider and a public utility.
They just can't rely on the existing electrical grid to power the next generation of data centers. They literally have to subsidize the physical infrastructure of the United States just to keep their models running.
And it's not just the physical power grid they are shoring up. It's the security infrastructure. OpenAI just expanded their Daybreak cyber defense program. They are pushing to get frontier cyber defense models into the hands of vetted organizations before adversaries can exploit what they call the narrowing cyber defense window.
Right, and that narrowing cyber defense window refers to the speed at which automated threats can now adapt.
Because the attacks are AI-driven now.
Exactly. If bad actors are using AI to generate novel cyber attacks, human security teams physically cannot patch systems fast enough. So OpenAI is trying to deploy AI-driven defense models that operate at the exact same speed as the automated attacks.
Wow. So we have U.S. companies literally buying the power grid and rushing cyber defenses out the door just to keep these enterprise models secure. But what happens when we look beyond the U.S.? Are international competitors playing this same massive infrastructure game, or are they finding a more efficient way to dominate?
They are finding a completely different path, actually, and it is entirely upending the global market.
The numbers back that up. Global weekly AI token usage just crossed 56.8 trillion. And just for context for everyone listening, a token is basically a piece of a word that the AI processes. So 57 trillion tokens flying around every week is an unimaginable volume of data.
It's hard to even picture.
It really is. But the leader on OpenRoader's weekly rankings isn't OpenAI or Anthropic, it's DeepSeek V4 Flash, pulling in 7.1 trillion tokens on its own.
Wow.
Yeah, and Chinese models claimed 9 of the top 10 global slots. Plus, Alibaba just put their Qwen 3.8 Max model live. This is an open-weight release with 2.4 trillion parameters and a 1 million token context window.
And just to pause on that, a 1 million token context window means the model can hold roughly 3,000 pages of text in its short-term memory for a single prompt.
That's insane.
It is. You could feed it an entire corporate code base or, dozens of legal textbooks in one go, and it won't forget the beginning of the text by the time it reaches the end.
But with almost 57 trillion tokens processing a week globally, how does Alibaba's model actually keep latency and costs down if it's dragging around 2.4 trillion parameters? I mean, a parameter is essentially a synthetic brain synapse. If a model has 2.4 trillion of them, it should require a supercomputer just to answer a basic question like what color the sky is.
Right, you'd think so. But Alibaba uses a mixture of experts architecture, or MOE.
Okay, how does that work?
Instead of activating all 2.4 trillion parameters for every single prompt, the model routes the query only to the relevant subset of parameters. Think of it like a massive university faculty. If you ask a highly specific question about quantum physics, you don't call an all-hands meeting with the history professors, the literature professors, and the botany professors.
And just call the physics department.
Exactly. You only activate the physics department. So out of its 2.4 trillion parameters, Qwen 3.8 Max only uses roughly 95 billion parameters per request.
Oh, wow. So it has the total knowledge capacity of a massive heavy-duty model, but the computational footprint of a much smaller one when it's actually running.
Yes. It's a highly efficient design, and it perfectly illustrates the divergence in global strategy we're seeing. U.S. companies are locking down their proprietary models, focusing on enterprise security, admin-managed agent teams, and literally paying to upgrade the U.S. power grid.
Right.
Meanwhile, Chinese companies are dominating the open-weight and open router ecosystems. And an open-weight release means developers can download the actual neural network weights and run the model on their own hardware rather than just accessing it through a locked API.
Oh, I see.
By releasing these highly efficient, massive models for free, Chinese companies are capturing the raw, global volume of usage.
Which is a huge strategic advantage. But the sheer volume of global usage, combined with the massive footprint of these open-weight models, naturally leads to the final inevitable roadblock for any booming industry, the regulators.
Always. We are seeing a wave of global regulation right now that is fundamentally shaping product design before the products even launch.
Definitely. The EU Digital Markets Act, the DMA, just hit Google with a binding specification order. Google has to open 11 Android features, including screen automation and background execution, to competing AI agents by August 2027.
That's a huge shift for Android.
Massive. Yeah. We also have Anthropic fundamentally changing how its models output text to comply with the EU AI Act's transparency code. They're now watermarking all AI-generated text.
Right, the invisible watermarks.
The newsletter notes these marks are invisible, they survive being copied and pasted, and they are covered by C2PA standards. But here's where it gets really interesting. I have to push back on this watermarking concept.
Okay, go for it.
How can an invisible watermark survive being copied and pasted into a plain Notepad document? A text file doesn't have metadata or hidden pixels. Is this actual functional cryptography, or is this just regulatory theater to appease the EU?
No, it is highly functional cryptography. So C2PA is a standard for digital provenance, basically proving where a piece of media came from. In images, that means embedding data in the file. But for plain text, an AI watermark works by subtly altering the statistical distribution of the words the model chooses.
Wait, really?
Yeah, an AI generates text by assigning a probability score to thousands of possible next words and picking one. The watermark forces the model to choose slightly less common words in a very specific mathematical pattern.
That is so clever.
Isn't it? To a human reader, the sentence flows perfectly naturally, but a detection algorithm looks at the vocabulary choices and spots the hidden mathematical signature. Because the watermark is woven into the actual choice of words, it survives copying, pasting, and plain text formatting.
The pattern of the vocabulary itself is the watermark. That is brilliant. But this brings up a massive contradiction with the EU DMA forcing Google to open up Android screen automation.
What's fascinating here is how the EU's regulatory approach directly collides with the enterprise security concerns we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
But DMA is mandating that third-party AI agents must have the right to dig into the operating system level of your phone to execute tasks in the background. The EU wants to ensure Google doesn't monopolize agentic AI on its own devices.
But we just established that IT departments need the lockdown agent access because autonomous agents diving into systems is a massive security risk. So the EU is legislating that the infrastructure must remain open to third-party agents, while the enterprise market is desperately trying to close it off.
Yeah, it's a fundamental tension between antitrust regulation and cybersecurity. The U.S. is also stepping up regulation, but focusing strictly on safety rather than market competition. For example, Illinois just enacted the AI Safety Measures Act, which mandates independent third-party safety audits for frontier models.
And that makes Illinois the very first state to go beyond the disclosure-only regimes we've seen in places like California and New York.
Right, because disclosure regimes just require a company to publish a report detailing how they tested their own model.
Basically grading their own homework.
Exactly. A mandated third-party audit means an external group, certified by the state, actually gets to look under the hood and stress test the model before it ever deploys. It completely shifts the burden of proof from the corporation's internal PR team to an independent auditor.
And these regulations are starting to create very real borders in what used to be a totally borderless digital ecosystem. Look at Minimax, the Shanghai-based AI company. They just open-sourced their H3 video model, but they had to put strict licensing restrictions on users in the US and the EU.
Yeah, due to copyright.
Exactly. This was specifically due to ongoing generative video copyright challenges in those specific markets.
The legal friction is literally dictating where certain capabilities are legally allowed to operate. You have open-weight models restricted by geography based entirely on local copyright interpretations.
It's wild. Well, this has been a massive stack of updates to get through. We started out looking at 1 billion active users, treating AI like an everyday utility, engaging through voice and generating millions of images. We saw that scale push into the workday, where AI agents are being locked down by enterprise admins to standardize our workflows and secure company data. We looked at the physical power grids buckling under the computational strain, forcing software companies to literally pay for U.S. electrical infrastructure upgrades.
Yep, the hydro dam analogy.
Exactly. Then we watched the global token dominance shift toward incredibly efficient open-weight models out of China using that mixture of experts architecture. And finally, we saw governments stepping in, from the EU forcing Android screens open to Illinois, mandating third-party safety audits.
I think the transition from a novelty application to inescapable global infrastructure is basically complete. The challenges now are physical power, cybersecurity, and international law.
I completely agree. And I want to leave you with a thought based on that last story about Minimax geo-restricting their open-source video model. We talked about how they had to block the US and the EU simply because of regional copyright laws. It really makes you wonder, as copyright, safety audits, and antitrust regulations physically shape where and how AI models can be deployed, are we heading toward a splinternet of AI?
That's a fascinating question.
Right. If AI is the new infrastructure, what happens when the capabilities of that infrastructure change completely depending on where you are on the map? Could we be looking at a near future where your ability to automate a workflow, generate a video, or run an autonomous agent team depends entirely on the laws of the country you happen to be standing in? It is definitely something to think about as this infrastructure continues to get built all around us. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.